Since Dad might not have much time left, I decided I could tolerate everything a little longer. That thought became my quiet justification for staying silent, for swallowing my discomfort, for pretending things didn't hurt as much as they did. "You're awful, Greg," I thought more than once. Yet I couldn't ignore the uncomfortable truth creeping into my heart. I had started measuring him only by money and obligation. That realization disturbed me deeply. It wasn't who I wanted to be. One afternoon, by accident, I overheard a conversation between my brother and his wife, words sharp enough to cut through walls. My father must have heard them too. When I saw his face afterward, drained of its usual warmth, something inside me twisted painfully. Standing beside him, I felt an unbearable urge to step in, to say something, anything. I reached for the doorknob, ready to confront them, but Dad gently caught my hand and slowly shook his head. "Don't worry," he whispered. "There's just one thing I need help with." His tone suggested he had already made a decision, something deliberate, something final, possibly involving Greg and his wife. Yet he didn't explain further, leaving his words hanging heavily between us. "My name is Susan Owen. I am 58 years old, and I work at a local osteopathic clinic where I manage reception and various administrative tasks. My husband, Robert, is the same age as me, and together we have a 28-year-old daughter. We married when we were both 25, full of hope and certainty. After years of heartbreak and failed attempts, our daughter was born when I was 30. She recently married and moved out, leaving our home quieter than I expected. Though loneliness occasionally creeps in, I'm truly happy watching her begin her own life. I've always preferred calm and harmony, avoiding confrontation whenever possible. Unfortunately, not everyone in my family shared that philosophy. My brother Greg, for example, couldn't be more different from me. Where I am reserved, he is forceful. Where I seek peace, he thrives on chaos. Even as children, Greg took pleasure in tormenting me. He destroyed a stuffed toy I treasured, taped insects onto my belongings, and once, an act I still can't forgive, released my beloved goldfish into the river. I cried for days. When Greg moved out as an adult, our contact naturally decreased, something I secretly welcomed. I hoped our relationship would remain distant. But life, as it often does, intervened. By coincidence, Robert ended up working at the same company as Greg, though in different departments. I intentionally avoided telling Robert much about my brother. Robert hates conflict as much as I do, and I didn't want to invite unnecessary tension into our marriage. His gentle temperament had always been my anchor, ever since we met in college. Marriage had felt inevitable to us, and both families approved quickly. Around the time Robert's career stabilized after a major promotion, Greg introduced the woman he planned to marry, Kate. Her arrival shifted everything. One quiet evening, while Robert and I relaxed on the couch, the doorbell rang. "I'm home, and I brought her," Greg announced loudly. That was my first encounter with Kate. She was Greg's former classmate, 2 years older than me, with light brown hair and bold makeup that gave her a restless, sharp appearance. Though appearances can mislead, my instincts immediately told me our values would clash. "Nice to meet you," I said politely. "I'm Susan, Greg's sister. I hope we can get along." Kate looked me up and down with thinly veiled disdain. "Oh, you're Susan," she replied. "It's inconvenient that we're getting married around the same time, but I suppose it can't be helped." Her curt tone irritated me. Robert and I had planned our wedding for years with our parents' blessing. Her attitude felt unnecessary. Still, I chose restraint. "I hope we can all live peacefully," I said with a forced smile. My father, ever the mediator, stepped in warmly. A respected pediatrician in the community, his kindness was legendary. He had always encouraged stability and harmony, values I carried deeply. Yet those values were constantly tested by Greg and Kate. The real fracture came after Robert's promotion. Despite Greg being older and more senior, he was passed over. Robert's diligence and success on a major project earned him recognition instead. To celebrate, my father invited us to dinner, intentionally not telling Greg to spare his feelings. Unfortunately, Greg saw our car outside and stormed in with Kate. "What's this?" Greg shouted. A celebration without us? Kate added venomously. So you favor your son-in-law over your own son now. Their bitterness poisoned the evening. Greg is important too, my father said gently. But Robert is family. Good news deserves celebration. Seeing my father apologize broke my heart. Robert quickly intervened, calming the situation and urging everyone to enjoy the meal together. Later that evening, Robert and I shared news of our fertility treatments. My father listened quietly before revealing something unexpected. We, too, had been conceived through fertility treatment. His words gave me hope. Kate soon interrupted. Fertility treatments? She scoffed. Then, deliberately, she added, actually, I'm pregnant. Her timing felt calculated. I congratulated her sincerely, though her expression suggested she doubted my honesty. Years passed. Kate and Greg welcomed a daughter. Robert and I endured 3 exhausting years of treatment before finally welcoming our own child, our miracle, on the last IVF attempt. During treatment, I left my job at Robert's suggestion, becoming a full-time homemaker. It also reduced contact with Kate, whose remarks remained cruel. The first time she saw our daughter, she sneered, "Such small eyes. Piffle must run." In the family, I nearly broke. Kate continued taking groceries from my parents' home without permission, laughing it off. My mother later admitted it happened often. Then came the call. My father had collapsed. At the hospital, he looked surprisingly strong, until my mother pulled me aside and revealed the truth. He had cancer, terminal, 3 months. When I confronted him, he admitted he'd known for months and wanted to spare us pain. "I'd like to spend my remaining time at home," he said softly, "if that's all right." "Of course," I replied through tears. "We'll make it work." From then on, I spent most of my time at my parents' house, my daughter who lived 2 hours away by train, visited often to see her father, which delighted him. Robert, despite his busy schedule, provided unwavering support, helping with errands and spending time with my father. When I informed Greg and Kate about the situation, they suddenly stopped visiting together, however, a few days later, my father invited both families to his house. "There's something about the inheritance I need to discuss," he said. Greg and Kate's eyes lit up. My assets amount to about $5 million. My father revealed. The room fell silent, everyone except my mother, stunned by the amount. Explained that, in addition to high income as a doctor, he had amassed wealth through stock investments. "I want to take me time and carefully decide how to handle this. I'd appreciate everyone's understanding," he added. Greg, who had shown little interest in our father's shelf until now, quickly responded, "Of course, Dad." I could barely contain my anger, but I stayed silent from that day. And Greg and Kate started visiting daily, voting on my father with newfound enthusiasm. They changed his sheets, replenished his medications, and acted as devoted caregivers. My father seemed pleased by their attention, though I couldn't shake my discomfort at their sudden change in behavior. One evening, as my parents and I returned from the hospital, I noticed unfamiliar shoes in the entryway. It was Greg and Kate heading to the living room with my father. I overheard their conversation. "$5 million is incredible. Dad will be gone soon, so let's just endure it a little longer," Greg said. "Terrible, aren't you?" Kate teased, though she didn't seem entirely opposed. Hearing this, my father's face grew sadder than I had ever seen. Unable to bear it, I stepped forward to confront them, but my father stopped me with a gentle shake of his head. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "There's just one thing I need help with." The next day, Greg and Kate resumed their carrying duties, but my father, now more perceptive than ever, confronted them with surprising frankness. "You must be eager for the inheritance," he said. Greg and Kate froze. "Oh no, father, that's not true at all," Kate protested hastily. "If anything, we want you to live as long as possible." My father's response was a knowing laugh. Watching their flustered reactions, I couldn't help but find the scene almost absurd. Later that evening, Robert arrived early from work to join us for dinner. "Hello, father," he greeted warmly. In that moment, amidst all the cows and pretenses, I realized just how fortunate I was to have a husband like Robert, a man whose kindness and sincerity were a steadying presence in my life. One evening, Robert brought a basket of delicious-looking grapes to share. "Let's chill these and enjoy them later," he said with a warm smile. My father beamed. "What magnificent fruits. I can't wait to try them." "Thank you." Roberta's always helped prepare dinner, and soon we all sat down at the table. It was during this meal that Robert brought you pan unexpected. Topic: I heard that Greg at his job, he said, looking around theatable surprised we couldn't immediate a lispand. It seems he didn't quit voluntarily, he was fired. Robert content what happened? I asked, trying to process this new information. Robert explained that Greg's work performance had been declining for some time. He'd been reprimanded repeatedly, and after a heated argument with a client and a supervisor, he was forced to resign. Theming struck me as significant. That was right after father mentioned the inheritance, wasn't it? Robert nodded. It seems so. My father sighed deeply. That child used to be so promising. I don't know where things went wrong. His face reflected a profound sadness that washered too. Bear sensing the mood, Robert changed the subject. Let'n not let food get cold. Thank you for everything, father. We're so grateful to have you. Ignore lives. His words brought a faint smile to my father's face. Thank you, Robert. I'm glad you joined our family. With a renewed sense of resolve, me father stood up, leaning on his caneve. Made up my mind about something and need everyone's cooperation, he declared. Handed us an envelope. Inside was a document outlining his final wish. After hearing his explanation, we were surprised but agreed to honor his plan. Well, weeks later, my father passed away peacefully, surrounded by my mother, Robert, and me. We couldn't reach Greg or Kate in time, and they were absent during those final moments. The funeral lanced through my father's hospital was attended by many of his patients and colleagues. It was a testament to how deeply he was loved and respected. After the funeral, Greg immediately brought up topic of inheritance. Father just passed away and you're already talking about this, I said, struggling to hide my disappointment. Kate chimed in, seemingly emphasized. Everyone grieves differently, but need to sort out the estate quick. Robert, who rarely raised his voice, finally snapped, neither of you deserves anything from this inheritance. Your behavior has been disgraceful. Greg, faced her with anger, retorted, you don't need the money, Robert, you're already earning a high salary. Kate added, let'n just spliff $5 million and move on. Shaking with anger, I say, do planning a trip to Hawaii while we're still grieving. Have you noticed me unperturbed? Kate shrugged. We'll be back after the trip, just transfer our share of the inheritance to our account. We're leaving. They handed over their bank details, expecting their windfall. A few days later, they returned from Hawaii offering a can of macadamia nuts as a souvenir. So about the inheritance, Greg said, we noticed nothing's been deposited yet. It's already been divided. I replied calmly. They scoffed. There's only $1 in the account. What's going on? I handed them my father's will. It stated that the majority of the estate was left to my mother and me, with $500,000 each. Greg received only $11,000 and the rest was donated to pediatric medicine. Greg's face turned pale. As realization dawned, I signed a document. Dad said it was for my share of $5 million. Greg stammered. Did you even read it? I asked. That was a deed of renunciation. You weighed your right to the inheritance entirely. Kate's face twisted in anger. Greg quit his job because we thought we were getting $5 million. We've spent all our savings. Desperate, pleaded with my mother, please at least give us $100. Zero grudge your son. My mother, holding back tears, shook her head. I'm sorry, but I can't. Your actions have only ever revolved around money. The $1,000 was your father's final act of kindness. Use it wisely. With that, she left the room. Greg and Kate begged for more, but I had had enough. You belittled our family for years. You took groceries and money without shame. I'm done. Leave and don't come back. Defeated, they left. Their once lofty expectations shattered in the years that followed. Greg and Kate's life unraveled. Greg, jobless and unable to maintain their mortgage, lost their home. They moved into a small apartment, struggling to make ends meet with day labor. Even their daughter, knowing the full story, refused to help them, and while I used the inheritance to renovate the family home, making it safe and accessible for my mother. Most joyously, my daughter gave birth to a healthy baby boy, my first grandchild. My mother, overjoyed, found a new spark of happiness playing with her Greek grandson after years of turmoil. Peace finally settled over our lives. Cherish each day spent with my precious family, treasuring the calm and fulfillment that had long eluded us.